Asuka is one of the most talented and yet underutilized WWE superstars of the last decade. After making a name for herself as Kana in Japan, the WWE came calling and she debuted for NXT in 2015. After that, she absolutely dominated her way through everyone on her brand, ultimately winning the NXT Women's title from top babyface Bayley the following year. From there, Asuka continued to crush the women's division for another whole year, and not once did Asuka ever lose a match in any form. Asuka was absolutely unstoppable. In the end, no one could defeat her for the title, and she only lost it via collarbone injury. However, this seemed to be a blessing in disguise, as in October, Asuka was finally moved up to Raw, where she defeated Emma in her debut at TLC. She would then go on to win the Survivor Series match for Team Raw, and even won the first ever Women's Royal Rumble match. She continued being undefeated all the way until WrestleMania 34, when she challenged Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship. This seemed to be Asuka's christening as one of the top faces in the WWE, and this match was certainly one of the best of the night, if not the best. However, as per tradition in New Orleans, a streak was ended. Asuka unfortunately lost to Charlotte Flair on this night, thus ending her winning streak at 914 days. Yes, you heard me right, 914 days. Asuka did not lose a single match. However, WWE still had a main event star on their hands and could have kept her legitimate despite this loss, but instead, everything just fell off the rails and crashed horrifically. Asuka would be booked to somehow lose a feud with Carmella of all people over the title when James Ellsworth interfered and horrifically kept her distracted for what felt like an eternity, costing her the SmackDown Women's Championship in the process. This loss at Money in the Bank absolutely damaged Asuka beyond repair, because then she would go on to lose to Carmella again at Extreme Rules, then she wasn't even featured at SummerSlam, then she was randomly paired up with Naomi and lost to the Iconics in a tag team match at Super Showdown in Australia, then she failed to win the Battle Royal at Evolution, then she and Miz failed to win the Mixed Match Challenge for the second time in a row. Then Asuka took the final pin for Team SmackDown at Survivor Series before finally winning the title at TLC, but only after Ronda Rousey overshadowed her for the second time that year. Then Asuka had an admittedly great successful title defense against a white-hot Becky Lynch at the Royal Rumble. But then Asuka basically did absolutely nothing, despite being the champion. It really felt like WWE just forgot that she was the champion, because out of nowhere, and I do mean out of nowhere, Charlotte just beat Asuka on SmackDown right before WrestleMania, and then carried it into the main event while Asuka wasn't even on the main card. Since then, she's been paired with Kairi Sane, and then they didn't appear on television for months. Right now, she's finally rejuvenated herself by turning heel and having a dominating tag team title reign, but my goodness, did it take her an obnoxiously long time to get there. It was unprecedented how much WWE normalized Asuka's aura. WWE, as per usual, just really messed up with an NXT call-up. But what makes this one sting so badly is that she had such a long winning streak, and she even won the first ever Women's Royal Rumble match. It felt like such a waste after seeing everything they did, or sometimes didn't do with her for the next 2 years. It was such a waste of her talent, and it shouldn't have been like that. I think Asuka deserved a bit better than what she was given, thank you very much. So today, I'm going to try and fantasy book the hell out of Asuka's time on the main roster. Let's fix Asuka's main roster run. So to start off, everything between her debut in October and WrestleMania itself would remain largely unchanged. It was actually booked really well in my opinion, and the only thing I would actually change is that Ronda Rousey would debut the following night on Raw instead of at the Royal Rumble itself. This would drive up Raw's ratings anyway and would let Asuka have her moment, because I'm sorry, but her debut rubbed me the wrong way because it really did take away from Asuka's victory. After this, though, the major changes wouldn't start until WrestleMania, where Asuka beats Charlotte to become the SmackDown Women's Champion. Her undefeated streak would therefore continue. Charlotte would then fail to regain it at Backlash and would look very much not herself after the match. Not just upset by the loss, but also confused as though she doesn't know what to do with herself anymore. This will be explained later on, don't worry. Charlotte begs Asuka for another shot at the title. Charlotte becomes obsessed with beating Asuka. Charlotte's been portrayed as a woman who's used to getting what she wants and proving people wrong, so she becomes obsessed with beating Asuka and regaining her place as the top woman on SmackDown. This storyline is going to be very reminiscent of the Shawn Michaels Undertaker feud of 2010. Not completely the same, but very similar. I mean, if it ain't broke. So then Asuka refuses to give Charlotte another chance. She's beaten her twice already, and she has nothing more to prove to the audience or to Charlotte. So Charlotte, being desperate, vows to win Money in the Bank and cash in on Asuka to finally get her match with her. On the same show, Carmella becomes the first person ever to cash in exactly a year after winning the briefcase, but Carmella ultimately falls to Asuka. Meanwhile, Charlotte puts on a hell of a performance to try and win Money in the Bank, but Alexa Bliss knocks her off the ladder and snags the contract just before Charlotte can. Charlotte is hurt and confused by her defeat, and she just snaps and attacks everyone else around her, including the referees. It's a moment that Charlotte begins to seem more heelish in. Anyways, then Charlotte would disappear for the next month before returning at Extreme Rules to try and ultimately fail to screw over Asuka during her title defense against Naomi. So then a number one contenders match is had on SmackDown between Charlotte and Becky Lynch, and Becky Lynch wins. So Charlotte then attacks her in the locker room and leaves her injured in kayfabe. Charlotte in this timeline actively steals Becky's spot against Asuka. At SummerSlam, Asuka actually retains, however, after Becky returns and helps Asuka win to get revenge on Charlotte. So then Becky beats the hell out of her and her transformation into the Man is complete. When I was making this alternate scenario, I wanted to make sure the scenario didn't affect Becky Lynch's rise to the top, and I think that this is a good alternative. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Asuka would then spend the next couple of months winning all of her matches against lesser women on the card like Dana Brooke, Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, people who aren't necessarily main eventers, but they keep Asuka's win streak going, and that's still impressive. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Becky continue to have their feud like they did in real life, which culminates with a draw in their last woman standing match at Evolution, when neither woman can answer the 10 count. So at TLC, it's a triple threat, where Asuka retains thanks to Ronda Rousey, who still seeks revenge on Charlotte for a Survivor Series. It's played out that Charlotte actually did this to Ronda to regain her confidence as the queen. Asuka, however, would then retain against Becky Lynch at the Royal Rumble, just like in real life, and it's from here that things would start to change quite a bit. In this alternate timeline, the main event of WrestleMania 35 is still a women's match, but it's a singles match between Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey. I honestly wanted this to be the main event. I didn't feel like Charlotte had any place in that match. She had already lost to Becky so many times by that point, and her involvement cost Asuka a match at WrestleMania. So in this alternate timeline, Charlotte's involvement ends when Ronda beats her clean at Elimination Chamber. So then Charlotte starts to get desperate. She turns her attention back to Asuka again, but Asuka once again says no to a rematch with Charlotte. So Charlotte actually invades NXT and she kidnaps Kairi Sane, Asuka's best friend. So Asuka finally relents. She agrees to defend against Charlotte at WrestleMania. However, if Charlotte loses, then she can never challenge Asuka for the title again. And Charlotte agrees. The rematch is on. They have an even better match than they did the year before. However, once again, Charlotte loses. This allows Charlotte to simply accept defeat and turn babyface, acknowledging finally that Asuka is the better woman and promptly switching over to Raw. Her feud with Asuka finally complete. Now you might be wondering why I'm making Charlotte seem like such a loser in this feud. And here's the thing, Charlotte's already a multi-time women's champion, and that's not going to change. She's going to keep winning women's championships. Meanwhile, Asuka is not somebody that management ever seemed to be completely behind. So any victory that she had was a key victory to her career as a whole. So I truly do believe that Charlotte, while she could recover, Asuka was always going to have a hard time recovering, and Charlotte really didn't need this victory. I would have given the victory to somebody whose career was actually in danger and who could have used the momentum of beating Asuka to rejuvenate herself. And Charlotte was just not that woman. Charlotte could just pick herself up whenever she wanted to, so Charlotte really didn't need the victory. So, while Becky, Ronda, and Charlotte are feuding on Raw, who does Asuka feud with on SmackDown, you might be wondering? Well, she'd be feuding with Bayley. Yes, Bayley. They have a history together, since Asuka did essentially expel Bayley from NXT, so in this timeline, Bayley gets drafted to SmackDown and lets her intentions be known by immediately turning heel and attacking Asuka. Bayley then debuts a new haircut, and the following week, she explains that she blames Asuka for her shortcomings on the main roster. She claims that everything went wrong for her after Asuka beat her in NXT, which admittedly is kinda true if you think about it. Bayley's main roster run between September 2016 and September 2019 was absolutely abysmal. It was miserable watching Bayley suffer so much. So Bayley wants to get revenge on Asuka. This is a huge feud that culminates with Bayley ending Asuka's undefeated streak at SummerSlam 2019 to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. It's a hell of a moment, and it allows Bayley to look very good indeed. It rejuvenates her failing career, and Bayley is going to be taken seriously again from this point on. And if you're wondering about Money in the Bank, well, Bayley still does win Money in the Bank, but she actually cashes in for her match against Asuka at SummerSlam because she doesn't want a fluke victory on Asuka. She wants to actually beat her clean. And in this timeline, she does beat her clean at SummerSlam, and it's the biggest win of Bayley's career. Asuka would then do what she did with Charlotte. She would acknowledge that Bayley is the better woman and move on to the tag team division, just like she did in real life with Kairi Sane, thus course-correcting the timeline. So in this version of events, Asuka holds the SmackDown Women's title for a staggering 490 days from WrestleMania 34 to SummerSlam 2019. Her undefeated streak gets extended to a whopping 1,404 days. A more vulnerable side of Charlotte is revealed, the women get more representation in major storylines, and Asuka and Bayley's credibility are both fixed as a result. And that is how I would have fixed Asuka's main roster run.